This podcast is a Buenos Dias Media production.
This is the Grit on the Rocks podcast, where raw conversations meet smooth sips. Pull up a chair, pour your favorite drink, puff on your favorite cigar, and join us as we dive into the convos that matter. No scripts, no barriers, just unfiltered truth served straight up. Cheers to the real ones out there. Salud.
Welcome to Grit on the Rocks podcast. We are here. Yes, we are here. Grit on the Rocks podcast, where men tackle real issues. I am your host, and this is Grit on the Rocks podcast, as you may know, as you see in the title, as you hear me speaking and introducing it. For those of you who have been listening, thank you. We released already, we did the introduction episode, and then we did to introduce the concept of Friday Fumas edition. So if this is the first time you are hearing this podcast, we have our regular podcast. It could be myself with a guest, but we also, and in this, we just talk about random topics. We talk about issues surrounding men, basically. Things that we go through, things that we think, giving people an insight, right? If you are not a man, giving you an insight of what men think like. Obviously, we can't speak for all men, but how men think. And also, the idea is to, maybe you're listening to a story. Maybe you're listening to one of our participants and you relate to what they're talking about, and it can help you. I don't know. We're here to entertain, but you never know what comes out from these emails and participation. If this is your first time, again, if you're watching us on YouTube, I ask that you click on that like button, subscribe. It's totally free, costs you nothing. If you are listening to us in audio platforms, be it Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow the show, leave us a review, leave us some stars. That would be great. So our mission here is to explore real issues surrounding men today with a focus on sort of making masculinity cool again and encouraging men to strive for success in life, work, family, and beyond. Because I feel like so many people nowadays get uptight when you talk about men, when you talk about masculinity. I mean, recently I had released a promo on social media, and I guess it says the part where it says men. What is it? I had it here. So men, talking about real issues, and somebody got offended quickly and started with the as opposed to what? We're talking about men. That's it. Talking about issues. But anyway, this is where we'll have unfiltered conversations. Again, we are not here to please everyone. We're here to just talk about what it is. Situations. I mean, again, the idea is humor, obviously, but it's also entertainment. But also there's reality in all of it. So that's what you're listening to. That's what Grit on the Rocks podcast is. So in today's episode, I wanted to dive into what it means to be a man in the 21st century. We're going to take a look at the concept of masculinity and how it has evolved in good and bad ways. So, I would like to look at the balance between strength and vulnerability and how men can redefine masculinity in their terms. So before we do anything, I feel like I gotta put this.
The views and opinions expressed by the host, guest, and/or participants of this show do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Buenos Dias Media LLC, its associates, partners, and show sponsors. The content is intended for entertainment purposes and should not be construed as professional advice. Listener discretion is advised.
Exactly. Entertainment purposes, listener discretion is advised. So today I have my fake cigar here is like an e-cigar. I actually saw this in a show called The Gentleman. It's on Netflix. And I was intrigued as a cigar smoker myself. And I was like, I never seen that. Like this guy, granted, the one he had was like green. He's like just puffing. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, being that in New York City, you can't really smoke indoors unless you're at a cigar lounge. Or unless, I guess, if you have your own home and you have no neighbors and, nobody living downstairs or upstairs from you is fine. But I thought it was pretty cool. I was like, maybe I can have this. So when I'm in the podcast, when I'm indoors, maybe I can take a couple of puffs and pretend like I'm smoking a real cigar. I mean, the taste is not the same, but this one is mainly coffee. But I don't know, the taste is kind of weird. But again, I got it for podcast purposes. While I'm working here, I can pretend to smoke a real cigar. So, again, redefining modern masculinity. And let's look at how society's perception of masculinity has shifted over the decades. So traditionally, masculinity emphasized traits like physical strength, stoicism, and being the breadwinner. Right? That's how it was back then. It emphasized, physical strength. You got to be strong. You got to be built. You couldn't be a wimp. Having a straight face, being wise to a certain point, right? Being wise, knowing, or at least thinking that you know what is best for you, for your family. What do they need? But also being the breadwinner. Basically being the one who brings home the bacon, like they used to say, the one who brought in the salary, the one who took care of the bills, anything financial. And I mean, as that evolved with time and, women work also, it was still back then, it was traditional for men to make more than women. Again, still making them the breadwinner. And modern masculinity is more nuanced, incorporating emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and partnership in relationships. Some might even say that men are being molded into weaker beings than we once were. Modern masculinity, yeah, it's more conversations and more showing emotion, and they focus so much on, mental health and stuff like that. Again, this is not my opinion. This is what I found online. So this is what I'm reading. I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm just reading what I found. So let's take a look at the shift from traditional to modern masculinity. Traditional masculinity, right? Strong, silent, provider, protector. Modern masculinity, embracing emotional intelligence, equality in relationships, being a supportive partner, and showing vulnerability. So when I think of it myself, I feel like I try to live a balance of both traditional and modern. Why traditional? Because I believe a man should work out, have physical strength, have stoicism. I believe he should be a provider of some sort. I'm not saying he has to be the quote unquote breadwinner, but he should provide. He's not going to sit at home and just, watch TV or play video games. No, you should be bringing something to the table. And at minimum, you should be at least bringing 50% to the relationship. And I don't mean only financially, that means in everything. If we have a weight to carry, out of 100% of the weight to carry in our lives, our children, responsibilities, bills, whatever it may be, as a man, you should at least, at a minimum, bring 50% to the table. But I also believe in emotional intelligence, and I believe in equality in relationships. I believe in being a supportive partner, and I also believe in showing vulnerability. Now, saying this, I can embrace equality in the relationship, but there are things that, to me, one does better than the other. And it reminds me of in The Office when Michael Scott says, separate but equal. And he it clicks for him. Like he never understood what that meant. And now he understands it. So I do believe we are equal, but we are separate because we are different. I can't do everything a woman does. A woman can't do everything a man does. Oh, but like what? I can't give birth. Men cannot give birth. Men cannot get pregnant. Women cannot impregnate. Right? Okay. So with that said, right, let's look at some examples shown here, right? A contrast. It says John Wayne, traditional masculinity, with modern roles like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who combine strength and emotional openness. Because even action heroes in movies have evolved, moving from purely tough guys to characters with complex emotions and backstories. So I have a question for our listeners and viewers. What traits do you think define masculinity today? You can send us an email at the contact us section, right, at gritontheRocks.com. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is a section at the bottom that says contact us. You fill in the form, right? You put in your information, whatever it is. You can write your message right there, and we will get it. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Grit on the Rocks. You can send us an email at info@gritontheRocks.com or gritontheRocks@gmail.com. Okay? So when we talk about balancing strength with vulnerability, I think it's important to be able to express emotions without feeling it compromises one's masculinity. Right? I can be vulnerable. I can communicate. I can talk. As a person like me, which is why I find myself constantly coming back to podcasting, I love having conversations. I love having meaningful conversations. And a person like me, when there is dead silence, I have to fill in the silence. I don't function well in complete silence. Even to sleep, my wife can attest to this. Even to sleep, I have to have some type of noise, either the rain playing on my phone, or since we have the baby, we have the shushing noise, something. And if there's nothing else, the AC has to be on, and at bare minimum, a fan where I can hear it. But I need sound. When I study, when I read, when I write, I need sound. Sometimes I'll turn on the TV just to hear background noise. But that's just who I am. And again, I love having conversations. I love just talking with people. And the truth is, not everyone likes to hear a person talk too much. But for those of you who do, that's why we have podcasts like this, meaning that if you tune in, it's because you want to listen. So anyway, we look at figures like Terry Crews, who have spoken openly about his struggles with mental health and how it's made him stronger. So we see how men, Terry Crews is a big dude. And I've heard him speak in podcasts, and he talks about his life and how he struggled with that, and, communication, and how, being a quote unquote badass, and you got to be a manly man. And now he's understood the importance of being vulnerable and speaking out and talking, just, putting it out there, basically. So this is something that has become a growing trend, male figures in the public eye discussing therapy, mental health, and personal challenges. When it comes to therapy and mental health, even though I agree that it should be talked about, I think it's become a little too much, to the point where some of us are just using it as an excuse for being assholes. Why do I say that? Because again, if you remember when I said in the beginning, I believe in balance. I try to be balanced in everything I do. I try to have some sort of balance. And I feel like when we lose balance and we tilt more to one side than the other, that's when things go out of whack, until a point where if we keep leaning, now we got a shit show. So I do believe in being vulnerable, but it's not all about being emotional about everything. That's why we have so much of society nowadays where everyone is offended. Everyone gets offended. Everyone's emotions and feelings are important. And, we have so much censorship because of that. Just like mental health. Mental health is real. Yes. Is it good to talk about it? Of course it is. 100% I agree. But now we also have where everything has become mental health issue. We see someone doing whatever it is, something they shouldn't be doing, committing a crime or just, abusing of another person. Like here in New York City, we see constantly young men attacking elderly people just for the hell of it. They walk by them, punch them in the face, knock them out, and just keep it moving. And when you try to address it, oh no, that's mental health. And they get off scot-free because it's categorized as mental health. It's just come to a point where everything is mental health and trauma. Recently I was trying to look up the term generational wealth. And I went on Google. And before I could finish typing, the number one suggestion as I was writing generational, it quickly gave me generational trauma. And if that's the number one term being searched, it's definitely a problem. So anyway, before we continue, we're going to do some whiskey bar wisdom. For those of you who don't know what whiskey bar wisdom is, it's a segment of the show where our listeners and viewers submit an email. Again, you can go to gritontheRocks.com, scroll to the bottom, find the contact us section, write it there, or just send us an email at info@gritontheRocks.com or gritontheRocks@gmail.com. And you can submit your story, right? For the different segments of the show. We have Whiskey Bar Wisdom, which is men. It could be women, but hey, men. Send their story, and I or my guest will just offer our unprofessional advice. That's it. We'll comment on it. It could be funny. It could be whatever kind of story, whatever situation you want to share with us. We will make fun of it or talk about it or address it, or I don't know what's going to happen, but we will comment on it. Basically, that's what it is. So before we jump into, we also have Barstool Banter, Hero of the Day, and Kryptonite Sessions, but we will talk about that more later. So before we jump into Whiskey Bar Wisdom, let's hear a word from our sponsors.
Looking to connect with like-minded men who share your drive for success and passion for the finer things in life? Welcome to the Apex Gentlemen's Guild, a private members club for men who value ambition, camaraderie, giving back, and personal growth. For a limited time while we're fully remote, you can join the Guild for free. Gain access to tons of motivational content, exclusive events, insightful discussions, and a network of high-performance individuals. Don't miss this chance to elevate your social circle. Request to join today at facebook.com/groups/Apex Gentlemen's Guild, or give us a like at facebook.com/Apex Gentlemen's Guild. The Apex Gentlemen's Guild, excellence forged in unity.
All right, so welcome back to Grit on the Rocks podcast, a Buenos Dias media production. We are jumping now into our Whiskey Bar Wisdom. Now it's time for some Whiskey Bar Wisdom. All right, there's nothing magical about it. Here, drink this. Tell me what's on your mind. Come on. All right, so this email was sent to us through our contact us section of gritontheRocks.com. This is from Frank Watt Roswell from Connecticut. And it says, Dear Grit on the Rocks team, I hope this email finds you well. My name is Frank Roswell, and I'm writing in from Connecticut. First off, I want to say I found your page through a friend of mine that had seen your Instagram and told me to check it out. And I decided to write in and see if my email got chosen. There you go. You are here. I really look forward to enjoying the podcast for years to come and become a regular participant. There's nothing quite like unwinding after a long day with a glass of whiskey and listening to some real talk from men who get it. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. I wanted to reach out for a segment of Whiskey Bar Wisdom because I could use some advice from the Grit on the Rocks crew. I've been struggling lately with balancing my career and my family life, and I think I'm at a point where I need some outside perspective. Here's the situation. I'm in my early 40s, married with 2 kids, ages 10 and 7. I've worked hard to get where I am in my career. I am a regional manager for a logistics company, and the job is demanding. I'm on the road a lot, and when I'm home, I'm often catching up on work. My wife is incredibly supportive, but I can tell that the constant travel and late nights are starting to take a toll on our relationship, not to mention the time I'm missing out with my kids. I'm at a crossroads where I am wondering if it's worth to keep pushing for the next promotion or if I just scale back and try to find a better work-life balance. The problem is, I've always defined success by my career achievements, and I'm worried about losing that part of myself if I slow down. What would you do in my shoes? How do you find the right balance providing for your family and actually being present with them? Any advice or wisdom you could share would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for taking the time to read this, and I hope it makes it onto the show. Best regards, Frank Roswell from Connecticut. All right, Frank, thank you for your submission to the show. I see that this is an issue that we constantly hear about. I mean, when you're into the whole self-development and you watch constantly like entrepreneurs and stuff like that online, all I can say is, and this is something that I learned from joining mastermind groups and just hearing about the success of others and I've applied to my personal life, is that there needs to be a work-life balance. But when you work to build something, we all have goals. It's good to have goals. It's good to be ambitious. But I guess the main question we need to ask ourselves is why? Why are we doing it? Because if you're telling me I work hard because I want to give my children a great life, then you have to define what that great life is, because what's the purpose of providing a life that you're not a part of? Or are you just doing it for the lifestyle? And the truth is, for me personally, my kids are way more important than the lifestyle. I'd rather give them the little that I can and enjoy it with them, because these are the memories that they will carry. These are the things that when I pass on, they will remember. You think your kids will remember, like, oh, yeah, I remember how, well, they probably will remember, but not in a good way. Oh, yeah, our dad, yeah, he worked so hard and we never saw him. I appreciate that. And we do appreciate the hard work that our parents do. But one thing is that if you're working hard because you're trying to make ends meet, because you need to, and another thing is I'm working hard and hours and traveling and doing all this because there is a certain lifestyle I want to keep up with. As they say, keeping up with the Joneses. So there is a big difference. And again, it goes back to our why. Why are you doing it? Why are you working so hard? What are you working towards? Are you working to provide because you need to? Because if you don't make those long hours, your children will starve or your lights will be shut off, or, that there's a difference between need and want. Or you're doing it because you want to live a bigger lifestyle than you can afford. So I think that's the question we need to be asking ourselves when it comes to work-life balance. And again, this is my opinion. This is what I applied to my life, I think that I would be way more successful if I didn't appreciate so much the time that I spent with my kids. There were many opportunities where I was in the music business where required me to be away from home, away from my son, away from my family. And I refused to do so because my family was way more important to me than, the success. Did I do the right thing? I don't know. It was right for me. Maybe not, might not be right for you. Maybe you do what I did and you'll regret it. I don't regret it. But again, it all comes down to your why. What do you appreciate? What do you truly value? And if at the end of the day you are not happy with the choices or the job you are in because it's taking you away from your family, from your children, then maybe it might be time to explore different career paths. That's what I did. So yeah, again, my opinion, I am not a professional. This is not advice for you to go and take action. Again, I'm just giving you my opinion, how I did it for me and what worked for me. All right, so we've been talking about masculinity and how it's changed with time. For some people, it has evolved for the best, while for others, it's evolved for the worse. So what do you think? If you are watching us on YouTube, now is a good time for you to drop a comment down below. We will be reading. But I think that there's one important tip that I should mention is that as a man, we should be able to open up, because holding everything in and the stress buildup eventually ends up killing you, whether to a partner, a friend, or a therapist, or like me, to a mic, to a bunch of strangers. Strength isn't just about physical toughness, but also about the courage to be vulnerable. Would you agree? Drop your comments at the bottom. Some believe that men face the pressure to conform to outdated societal norms. Like example, when they tell you, man up. Or as children, when they tell you, boys don't cry. These are the type of things that we all grew up hearing, while others see it the other way around. They have more of a conservative, quote unquote, old school mentality, and they are pressured into following the new way of being a man. But me personally, I would encourage men to define masculinity on their terms based on your personal values rather than societal expectations. Be who you think represents you truly believe. What? Be who you think represents what you truly believe in. Be who you think represents what you truly believe in. Will some people have an issue with it? Of course. No matter what side you believe on, right, or what side you're on, there will be always someone to contradict your personal opinion. Like I said in the beginning, I believe in a balance of both the old school and the new school, the modern and the traditional. Social media has had an impact on how society as a whole has changed. There's pressures on all ends for men, women, teens. For everything, there is a contradiction to what we believe or how we were raised. Men constantly felt to be ashamed of their upbringing and their masculinity. Let's be clear. I'm not trying to generalize, just in case. There's a bunch of things that we as men needed to evolve. But there is such a thing as pushing too far. Like I said before, when we balance, we stand in the middle. We take the good, right? Get rid of the bad. And sometimes if you're too old school, you might want to move, right, to the modern a bit. And when you stand in the middle, you get the both of both worlds, the best of both worlds. But if you keep going, you forget what we had on the other side. But that's just me. So again, you can define masculinity on your term. Be who you are. You know, we have commercials like the Gillette commercial where it says that the best men can be, right? That campaign that has sparked this discussions on what it means to be a man today. You know, I agree with a lot of it. Yes, there are things we needed to change. Of course. As men, there is definitely things we needed to change. You know, the boys of today are the men of tomorrow. But I just don't agree when things are taken too far. Bullying isn't cool. We've established that. Even though some might argue that bullying builds character. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I've heard it said. You know, and usually that argument comes from people that don't have children. So they don't know what it is to, you know, not want your child to go through something like that. So it's easy to say, yeah, you know, bullying is okay. But no, bullying is not cool. We look at movements like the Me Too movement and how it spiraled out of control. Everybody was being canceled. Bullying is not cool, but teaching boys to be offended about everything isn't cool either. That's why we have now a ton of men who are overly sensitive. So yeah, we established that bullying is not cool. But you know what's not cool either? The oversensitivity. Again, lack of balance. But yes, things change. And when I really noticed it was when one of my brothers who hadn't been here in years, and I had to correct his speaking. My brother had spent years out of the country. And the last time he was here was maybe early 2000s, right? I want to say 2005 or 6. And then he left. This is before cancel culture. This is before social media became what it became. And then he comes over here, spends a few days in the city, and he keeps calling. This is during the hype of the Me Too and the, you know, cancel culture was at an all-time high. And we go and we're at a hospital, I think it was, and he keeps calling the nurse sweetheart. And I remember that when I first heard him, it just hit different in my ear. Back then, years ago, I wouldn't have flinched at it. And that is when I noticed, like, oh shit, like I am evolving, right? Because you start getting with the norm, you're following societal norms. And I had to explain to him, like, you know, when you do that, you sound kind of like a creep. I'm not saying that that's what I feel. It's just how it comes across in society, because that's where society was at the moment. So eventually, you know, he did understand and cut it out. But I had to explain that to him because he was not connected with like the modern vibe of things. All right, so let's take a moment to do some barstool banter.
Barstool Banter, brought to you by Buenos Dias Media, where great stories come to life. Welcome to Barstool Banter, the segment where your wildest, funniest, and most unforgettable stories take center stage. Whether it's that crazy night out with the guys, a hilarious encounter at the bar, a day out with the family, or an unforgettable moment with friends, we want to hear it all. Each week, we dive into your emails, share the best stories, and pick our favorite one, and who knows, maybe even win a prize. So grab a drink, light it up, pull up a stool, and let's get into some barstool banter.
All right, so let's get into some barstool banter. If you weren't paying attention, this is where our listeners submit their stories of, I don't know, life experiences. It could be funny. It could be, I don't know, stories about their kids, about their wife, or just their friends, or whatever it is. We go through the stories, we pick 3 of the best ones, and then out of those 3, we read them on the show, and then we pick our favorite one. And sometimes there might be prizes to give to our favorite one. So the first email was sent to us through the contact us section of gridontherocks.com. And this is from Mike Reynolds from Chicago, Illinois. And the subject reads, "The night I became the dance-off king at the bar." Hey, fellas. So picture this. It's a Friday night in Chicago, and I'm out with a couple of buddies at this dive bar we've been going to since college. It's one of those places where the jukebox is still a thing, and the drinks are strong enough to knock you on your ass after 2 rounds. We're a few rounds in, feeling good, when suddenly, out of nowhere, this dude, let's call him Chad, challenges me to a dance-off. Now, I'm no Fred Astaire, but I've had enough liquid courage to think, hell yeah, let's do this. The jukebox fires up, Uptown Funk, and it's on. Chad starts with some basic moves, nothing too crazy, so I bust out my best dad at a wedding moves. Shoulder shimmies, finger guns, the whole 9 yards. The crowd's into it, laughing their asses off. Then Chad pulls out the big guns. A full-on breakdance spin. The crowd goes wild, and I know I'm toast until the alcohol hits peak performance mode. I somehow managed to pull off the most epic, unintentional move of the night, the slip and slide. I went to spin, slipped on a spilled drink, and slid right across the floor on my stomach. The place erupts in cheers. Chad's got nothing on that. The bartender declares me the winner, and I walk away with a free round for the table and the unofficial title of Dance-Off King of the Bar. Moral of the story, never underestimate the power of a good slip and slide. Cheers, Mike Reynolds. All right, it's enough. Okay, so the second one comes from Joe Mitchell from Austin, Texas. Subject reads, "The time I tried to impress my date and ended up at a county karaoke night." Hey guys, so I took this girl I'd been seeing to a bar in downtown Austin. She's all into country music, and I figured I'd impress her by taking her to a spot where they do live music. Little did I know it was karaoke night. We walk in, and the place is packed with cowboys and cowgirls, all singing their hearts out to old school country tunes. My date's eyes light up, and before I know it, she signed us up to do a duet of Islands in the Stream by Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. Now, I am a rock guy. Give me some Zeppelin or AC/DC any day, but country, not my thing. But I wasn't about to back down. We get up there and the music starts. She's nailing her parts, sounding like she's ready for Nashville. And then it's my turn. I grab the mic, open my mouth, and completely butcher the first line. I'm talking full-on tone-deaf disaster. But instead of dying of embarrassment, I just went with it. I started hamming it up, doing these ridiculous twangy voices and over-the-top gestures, making everyone laugh, including my date. By the time we got to the chorus, the whole bar was singing along with us. We finished to a standing ovation. Well, more like everyone was too drunk to stay seated, but still. I didn't win anything, any singing competitions that night, but I did get a second date and the nickname Tex from the regulars. Who knew making a fool out of yourself would be so much fun? Best, Joe Mitchell. All right. That was our story number 2. Story number 3 comes to us from Miami, Florida, from T-Bone Carter. This was also sent to us through our Contact Us section of gritontheRocks.com. And it goes, "Hey, Grit on the Rocks. This story goes back a few years to a night out with my boys in Miami. We were hitting up this rooftop bar that's known for its wild parties and killer views. The night starts off normal enough. Drinks, music, the usual. But things take a turn when the random guy walks into the with a parrot on his shoulder. Okay. Now you'd think Miami, a guy with a parrot might not be that strange. But this bird was dressed with a tiny tuxedo. Swear to God, my buddy, always the jokester, decides he's going to impress some ladies by making friends with the parrot. So he saunters over, talks to the guy, and somehow convinces him to let the parrot hang out with us for a bit. Everything's going great. The parrot's chilling on my buddy's shoulder, and the ladies are loving it. But then, out of nowhere, the bird starts squawking, "Party, party, party," at the top of its lungs. The whole bar turns to see what's going on, and people start chanting along with the bird. It's chaos. People are dancing on tables. Bartenders are handing out free shots. Hell, even the parrot sipping from tiny glasses of water like it's a martini. The bar owner eventually comes over, laughing his ass off, and tells us we've officially made the parrot the king of the rooftop. Needless to say, it was a legendary night. The parrot went home with its owner, and my buddy went home with a couple of phone numbers. And the story we still tell at every reunion. Stay wild, T-Bone Carter. So I think these are pretty cool stories. To be honest, I think I kind of love that last one, with the parrot and having a tuxedo and, just I could just picture the parrot like drinking, water, obviously, but from a quote, like if it's a martini glass. I think that was pretty cool. So I think that would be the winner for today. Sadly to say, I don't have a prize today. Shout out to T-Bone Carter for, giving us that great story. All right, so now let's continue with masculinity. So the importance of men advocating for gender equality and positive change. The role of role models is shaping how younger generations perceive masculinity. This is true, right? With social media nowadays, listen, we're exposed to so much. And I mean, I am one of those that does agree with the thought that a lot of this is not new. It's just we weren't exposed to it like we are now. Like we see so many things happening around the world and we're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And yes, there are things that haven't happened before, but a lot of these things that shock us, especially in the beginning years of Facebook, when they had no like censorship, you would see the craziest shit ever and you'd be like, holy shit, what's going on? And yeah, it's basically you're being exposed to things that are probably normal in other countries. So now, we do see how a lot of the young minds are being shaped, right? A lot of these generations are being shaped by what they see. So I want to ask everyone here to think about the role models in their lives and who have shaped their view in life, who have shaped their view in masculinity. And I invite you to share your story, be it in the comments section if you are watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on the podcast, you can send us an email. You can just go to contact us section of gritontheRocks.com. So next up, we have the section of Hero of the Day. And I want you to stick around because next we have an example of what modern masculinity should always look like in our section of Hero of the Day. You are listening to Grit on the Rocks podcast, a Buenos Dias media production. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Grit on the Rocks podcast, and it's time for Hero of the Day, the segment where we celebrate everyday acts of kindness and the unsung heroes among us. Whether it's lending a helping hand, going the extra mile for someone in need, or making a positive impact in your community, we're here to honor your good deeds. Each week, we share an inspiring story from our listeners and recognize the hero behind it. So sit back, get inspired, and let's raise a glass to the heroes who make the world a better place.
So this was submitted to us through a Facebook private message. And this is from Tony Simmons. Subject, Hero of the Day, a small gesture, a big impact. Hey, Grit on the Rocks. I'm excited about this podcast and see where you guys take it. I love supporting ventures in their early stages. When I read on the Grit on the Rocks website about the Hero of the Day segment, when I read on the Grit on the Rocks website about the Hero of the Day segment, I figured I'd share a story that's been on my mind lately. A couple of weeks ago, I was running errands, just one of those busy Saturdays. I stopped by the grocery store to pick up a few things. And as I was heading out to my car, I noticed this older lady struggling with her bags. She had one of those walkers with a seat on it, and she was trying to balance everything, clearly having a tough time. Normally, I might have just kept going, but something told me to go over and see if she needed help. I walked up and offered to carry her bags and help her to her car. She looked up at me with the most grateful smile, like she hadn't expected anyone to notice, let alone offer to help. We started talking as I loaded the groceries into the trunk. She told me she'd been living alone since her husband passed away a few years ago, and it's been tough getting out and about on her own. We chatted for a few more minutes, and she told me about her kids who live out of state and how much she misses them. I think she was happy to have someone to talk to. Before I left, she reached into her purse and tried to give me a couple of dollars as a thank you. I politely declined, telling her it was my pleasure to help out. She looked at me, almost tearing up, and said, "You've made my day." It was such a small thing, but it felt really good to know I could make a difference, even if it's just for a moment. We all get caught up in our lives, but sometimes taking a second to lend a hand can mean the world to someone else. That is true. Thanks for giving us a platform to share these stories. It's great to be a part of a community that values doing good and making the world a better place, one small act at a time. Cheers, Tony Simmons. I think we should, we should always try to do something good for others. I try. I'm not saying I always do it, but I try. And I tell myself in the morning when I'm doing like my morning affirmations and, do something nice, do something for someone else, in that day. Okay. So we invite everyone to submit their stories for Whiskey Bar Wisdom, Barstool Banter, Hero of the Day. And we're going to have Kryptonite sessions, which I know a lot of men don't like to be vulnerable, but Kryptonite sessions is more for a moment of vulnerability where you can submit a story of something you might be struggling with. And, who knows who's listening, and they might be going through the same thing. And we discuss, as friends, as men, and who knows, right, how that can help them. You never know, right? So again, gritonTheRocks.com, scroll down to the bottom to the Contact Us section and submit your story. So before we leave, we're going to go down a list of the difference between masculinity in the year 2000 compared to 2024. Let's go down the list. Number one is cultural definition of masculinity. The year 2000. Masculinity was more rigidly defined by traditional roles, such as being the breadwinner, stoicism, and physical strength. We said that. 2024. Masculinity is more fluid and open, embracing emotional vulnerability, mental health, and broader range of expressions. Year 2000. Men were expected to be emotionally reserved, with the idea that showing emotion was a sign of weakness. That is true. And I've heard this a lot. It's like, no, you can't talk about your feelings. You can't show weakness. You can't show weakness, because if you show emotion, there's weakness. 2024, mental health is openly discussed. No, wait, emotional expression is more accepted and encouraged. Men are now open about their feelings, mental health, and struggles. Number 3, mental health awareness. Year 2000. Talking about mental health was rare and often stigmatized for men, seen as a personal failing. 2024. Mental health is openly discussed, with men being encouraged to seek therapy, talk about depression, and prioritize mental well-being. Number 4, fatherhood. 2000. The role of the father was often more traditional, focused on providing financially and disciplining children. 2024. Fatherhood now emphasizes emotional involvement, co-parenting, and hands-on role in raising children. Number 5, gender roles. Year 2000. Gender roles were more strictly adhered to, with men being seen as protectors and providers. I think that should be always a thing. Men should have that role of protector, but that's just me. If you agree, well, let me hear about it in the comment section. 2024, gender roles have blurred, with men embracing roles in caregiving, homemaking, and being stay-at-home dads. Number 6, work-life balance. Year 2000. Masculinity was linked to professional success and long hours at work, often at the expense of family time. 2024. Men are seeking more balance between career and personal life, prioritizing time with family, hobbies, and self-care. I agree, as it should be. Number 7, fitness and body image. Year 2000. A muscular, athletic physique was the standard for masculine ideals, and body image concerns weren't openly discussed. 2024. Body positivity has entered male culture, with a broader acceptance of different types and open discussions about men's body image issues. Number 8, attitude towards feminism. Year 2000. Many men were either indifferent or resistant to feminism, seeing it as a challenge to traditional male roles. 2024. Many men today see feminism as an opportunity for equality and mutual respect, and understand how it benefits both genders. My personal opinion, again, there has to be a balance. When we push things too far, this is when we are not balanced and we create chaos. Number 9, sexuality. Year 2000. Masculinity was often tied to heterosexuality, and non-heterosexual men face more stigma. 2024. There is more acceptance of different sexual orientations, and masculinity is no longer defined by heteronormativity. Number 10, fashion and grooming. Year 2000, men's fashion and grooming were more utilitarian and deviation form standard. Masculine styles was often mocked. 2024, men are more comfortable experimenting with fashion, grooming routines, and self-care without feeling like it compromises their masculinity. That is true. Number 11, technology and gaming. Year 2000, technology, gaming, and geek culture were considered niche interests, with men who embraced them often stereotyped. Yes, we call them nerds. 2024, tech and gaming are now mainstream, with men proudly embracing these interests without fear of losing masculine points. Some of them are called cool now. That's how it changes. But there's still all nerds out there. Number 12, dating and relationships. Year 2000, Masculinity in dating was about traditional roles, with men expected to pursue women and take charge in relationships. 2024, gender equality in dating has changed the dynamics, with men sharing emotional labor, seeking partnerships, and embracing vulnerability in relationships. Plead the fifth. Number 13, career and success, year 2000. Career success was tied to traditional masculine identity, with pressure on men to climb the corporate ladder and provide financially. 2024, success is defined more holistically, including emotional fulfillment, work-life balance, and meaningful work rather than just high salaries or status. I can see that. 14, masculine hobbies, year 2000. Hobbies were often defined by traditional masculine interests like sports, cars, physical labor, or leisure pleasures, such as cigar and or whiskey cultures. 2024. Men are more likely to engage in a wide range of hobbies, including cooking, yoga, and artistic pursuits without fear of judgment. I prefer the former. 15, community and brotherhood, year 2000. Male friendships often centered around activities rather than emotional support, with deep conversations rare. 2024, male friendships are more likely to include open emotional support and conversations about mental health, personal growth, and vulnerability. I guess I believe in both, right? Because I do believe that, the activities. But me personally, I enjoy a good conversation, not about mental health. I mean, unless it's somebody that's struggling with it and, they want to talk about it, I'm all ears. But I do love talking about personal growth, not so much vulnerability, unless it's somebody close. Number 16, leadership and authority. Year 2000, masculinity in leadership was defined by dominance, authority, and control. 2024, leadership has shifted toward empathy, collaboration, and emotional intelligence, qualities that no longer seem as unmanly. I don't know, it depends on the leadership, man. I think that a leader of a nation needs to have authority, dominance, and control. Number 17, sexual harassment and the hashtag #MeToo. Year 2000, conversations around sexual harassment were less prominent, and male behavior in professional and social spaces was less scrutinized. That is true. 2024, the Me Too movement has prompted men to reflect on behavior with greater emphasis on respect, consent, and accountability. I have to defer. I think the Me Too movement would have I don't think it really caused people to reflect. It just caused more fear, because anything you say, even a compliment, can be considered, sexual harassment, which again, we go back to the balance. I believe that these are conversations that had to happen. I believe that, men shouldn't have the right to say what they want and make women feel uncomfortable. I totally agree with that. But then it was pushed and pushed and pushed to the extremes where everything was considered sexual harassment, and you put everybody not in check. You just got them into fear, like, all right. And nowadays we see a lot of women have trouble dating because of this, and men have trouble dating because they're afraid of being considered, right, a sexual harasser or whatever you want to call it. Number 18, physical labor versus knowledge work. Year 2000, masculinity was still closely tied to physical labor and blue-collar jobs, with white-collar work sometimes seen as less manly. 2024, knowledge work and tech jobs are now embraced as masculine, and success is non-physical work is seen as equally valid. That is true. I agree. Number 19, media representation. Year 2000. Men were often depicted as tough, stoic heroes in media with little room for emotional complexity. 2024, media portrays a wider variety of masculine identities, including men who are vulnerable, nurturing, and introspective. Number 20, and the last one on the list, is masculinity and philanthropy. Year 2000, charitable work or community involvement was often seen as a secondary concern for men, less tied to their masculinity identity. 2024, philanthropy and community service has become more tied to masculinity, with men taking pride in giving back and using their resources to help others. I agree with that statement 100%. So these changes reflect how masculinity has evolved to be more inclusive, emotionally intelligent, and diverse in its expression, responding to cultural shifts and modern expectations. So I want you all to reflect on your own views of masculinity and how you might redefine it for yourself. I invite you all to share your thoughts on the comment section or on a Facebook or Instagram post. You can tag us or at us at Grit on the Rocks. That's how you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. You can contact us to gritontheRocks.com. Just find the contact us section. So for the next episode, I think we'll be, coming up following episodes, we have an episode on dad bods. We have an episode on epic failures when it comes to flirting and pickup lines. That and so much more. Also be on the lookout for Grit on the Rocks Friday Fumas edition. Those episodes drop on Fridays. If by any chance, they're recorded on Fridays. And if we can't drop it on Friday, they come out on Saturdays. But yeah, they are recorded on Fridays. So until next time, that's it for today's episode of Grit on the Rocks podcast. Remember to stay gritty, keep it real. And we'll catch you on the next time you are listening or you just listened to Grit on the Rocks podcast, a Buenos Dias media production. Stay safe, guys.
Cheers to the real ones out there. Salud.